Hello everyone and welcome again, Mr. K, and we are doing part 2 of our Hello World Unity project, the very first thing we are doing in Unity. Last time we had just a basic scene with a single script that printed out Hello World, and in fact we got pretty crazy with it, and it basically printed out Hello World every single frame of the game. Wild, I know. But today we're going to do something more interesting, I promise. So let's go ahead and get started. First off, I am working in the same exact project. You can do a brand new one if you want. Doesn't really matter. But I'm staying the same one. And I'm going to make a brand new scene. So in the project window, create scene. And this one I'm going to call scene 1. And just because I already made a folder for it, I might as well drag it in there. I now have scene 0 and scene 1. I'm now going to open it up, and it looks like almost nothing changed. Well, that's because our original scene had nothing going on in it. But if you look in the hierarchy, it now says scene 1. In the title bar, it now says scene 1. So if we flip back, and back to number 1. Oops, screwed that up. Okay, so double click, open the scene. And what we want to do from here is go into our hierarchy and create a game object. And we are going to create a 3D cube. Okay. Right off the bat, you're going to see a bunch of things. Let's get rid of that for now. Just go to the hand tool. In the inspector, which we're going to get to, there's a lot of components. There's the cube that's in the middle. It's got a big orange thing around it. That's because it's highlighted. So let's just do one thing at a time. First and foremost, some quick navigation. One of the videos, the intro video, I told you can hit F to jump to your cube. You can also just double click it. That works as well. Okay, so jump to the cube, and it looks pretty black, but you can move around a little bit. I like Alt and left click. It rotates the camera, gives you different perspectives. So we do have a light in here. If you feel like it, and I suggest doing it later, you can position a light and play with different rotations for it. It's a directional light, which basically means it's like the sun. Okay, the position doesn't matter so much. It's just coming from a single direction. Not that the position of the sun doesn't matter, but it's like, yeah, I don't know. It's really far away, so the position doesn't matter. Anyway, moving on. Let's go back to the cube here and take a look at the different components that we have going on here. So first and foremost, there is the transform component, which every single game object has. It tells its position in the game. I don't know why it came up in a weird spot, so I'm just going to go ahead and reset it. Now it is back to 0 and now missing. There we go. Double click it. There it is. Back to the origin of the Unity scene, which is 0, 0, 0. No rotation and no scale. After that, we have the cube mesh filter, which I talked about briefly in the other video. Basically, it gives the object its shape. That's pretty much it. At some point, you're going to get to more complicated things, but as far as the basics cube, and you can show it with the wireframe. That is its mesh. Okay, if we were to make a sphere. Okay, you see it's got a very different mesh filter to it. Basically, everything is broken down into triangles. So even though this is a sphere, it's made of very, very, very tiny triangles. We're going to get rid of this for now. Go back to shaded, and okay. So it's got that mesh filter, which gives it its shape, its collider, which is going to be used for detecting collisions and interacting with other objects in the scene. The mesh renderer, which gives it its appearance. The mesh filter just gives it its shape. The mesh renderer actually gives it its appearance. Okay, and underneath that at the very bottom is this default material, which we can't do anything with. That's because it's default. It's built into Unity, so it's untouchable. This is basically here because of the mesh renderer. If you look under materials, you'll see default material. If you were to pick a different one, and you can click on the side one. There's not many interesting options, but it does change the appearance a little bit. You'll see that it's updated here as well. So we'll just leave this alone for now. This is something for another day. So anyway, that's that. Those are the basic ones that it comes with. We are going to hit play now and just see what happens. Nothing. Whole lot of nothing. So we want to change that. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a component, and we're going to go down to physics, rigid body. What this component does is it tells Unity that we're going to use physics on this object. So that means like things like friction, and it gives it mass and drag and uses gravity. So if we hit the play button now, it falls. Gravity works on it, so it has physics working on it, which is good. We're going to take this and run with it. Okay. Before we do anything else, this is something that we want to reuse over and over and over again. Right now, this cube just exists in the scene and only the scene. If you look in our project window, in our assets, there's no cube there. So if we wanted to do something else with this, we really can't. So if we take this and just drag it over to our project window and let go, there it is. This is now what we call a prefab. And it basically just means you now have it as an asset and you can reuse it, you can clone it, you can put it in other scenes, you can make a million copies of it in the current scene, and yeah, that's about it. The icon here is just a coincidence. All prefabs have that cube icon, so even if we use the sphere, it would still be this little cube icon, so don't pay it any mind, except for this means prefab, okay? All right, where are we next? We are going to go back and delete this one now. That's right. We're going to go back to an empty scene, and we are now going to make a new C# script. C# script. We're going to call this Cube Spawner. Get a little preview of what it is. The basic default C# script nonsense. You can double click it to open it up, and we're going to start doing some code, a little bit more than last time, but not too much. Oh, by the way, I should point out, I'm going to flip back to Unity. There is another option, JavaScript. I'm doing everything in C# just because I'm more comfortable with it. And as far as I know, this isn't even real JavaScript. It's like Unity script, which is a tweak of what JavaScript actually is. But anyway, there are two supported languages in Unity. I'm going to be doing everything in C#. Sorry for anyone who wants to do the JavaScript one, but yeah. Don't know what to tell you. Anyway, back in Mono Develop, we're going to add a couple pieces of code here. First one, it's going to go roughly at line 7. It's going to go after your class definition and before your void start. And we're going to type in public game object. You might get some autocomplete stuff in there if you like. And we're going to call it cube prefab var. Now, what is this nonsense, this basic junk that I typed in here? Simply put, what we just made is a variable. Now, variables in programming work a little bit differently than they do in algebra, where you were pretty much introduced to variables. In programming, you can think of them more as containers. All right, and the containers have a specific type of information. So, in this case, we have a variable and the variable name, kind of like calling a variable x or y or n. Our name is cube prefab var, which is kind of just shorthand for we are going to put a prefab variable for our cube, basically. But that's its name. You can literally call it whatever you want. Names that make sense are, of course, better because when you have to go back and read your code, you want to make it as easy as possible to read. If you, hold on. Excuse me, if you made it some kind of nonsense, like, I don't know, just some kind of gibberish, going back and reading your code would be next to impossible. So give it a name that makes sense. So what are your intentions for this thing, that kind of nonsense? Anyway, so this is the name of the container of the variable, and the type of information it's going to contain is a game object. Okay, a game object in our case is the cube. We're going to put our cube there, but it could be any game object. So if we made a sphere, or if you go back to the Unity example project, it could be like the airplane fuselage, the car wheels, anything like that. Any game object is acceptable, okay? There are other types of variables as well. There are ints, which hold integers, floats, which hold decimals, and why it's called a float is a story for another day. All different types of variables, but you have to tell what type of information it's going to hold. In this case, it's a game object. Public, which we've seen now in a couple spots, basically means that this is accessible from anywhere. And this is opposed to private, where it's only accessible within this class itself, just to oversimplify it a bit. And I'm actually going to show you what this means in a little bit, but not quite yet. But basically, we made a variable. The variable name is cube prefab var. It's the variable type is game object, and it is publicly accessible. Okay. All right. That's the big chunk of this video right there, is this one single line of code. If you can wrap your head around this, then everything else is in good shape. Next up, we want to put a line of code here, instantiate, autocomplete, and we're going to instantiate our cube prefab var. What this line of code is going to do is, if you don't know what instantiate is create an instance of our cube prefab var. So basically, at some point, we're going to put a game object into this variable, and whatever that game object happens to be will be instantiated when this script starts. Okay? Make sense so far? I hope. If not, go back, watch it again. If you haven't been in my class, call me over and ask me. So, save it, flip back to Unity, and, well, if we run it, nothing's going to happen. But we need to do what we did yesterday, which was take this cube spawner and we need to drag it onto something so it runs. Main camera is always a good idea, at least for now. And if we click on main camera, we will see the script at the bottom. Okay. In addition to that, and this is something new from yesterday, there is cube prefab var, although the spacing and the way it looks is a bit different. And it's indicating that there is no game object is assigned to it at the moment. Because we made it public, we can now, in the inspector, manipulate it directly. We don't have to go into the code and change things around. So if I wanted to, and I'm going to, I could take this cube, because it's a game object, and drag it in there. And now all of a sudden it's there. If I were to instance, make this private, save it and go back, you're going to see that this is going to disappear. Okay, private means it's only accessible inside that class. So now that I have a private variable, I can't get to it from the inspector. I also get this warning, which is something else. Basically, it means that this cube prefab var is always going to be null because reasons. But we want it to be public, so let's flip it back. Save it, flip back, Alt Tab. If you don't know about Alt Tab, it flips back and forth between application windows. Anyway. We have it back. Remember that I want the cube there. Nice, very handy. And let's go ahead and hit play. A cube appeared and it fell to the ground like it's supposed to do. So there it is instantiating. Okay, it created an instance of our cube prefab, I don't know, prefab, and then it fell to the ground like it's supposed to do. So far, so good. Guess what we're going to do next? Just like yesterday, we are going to take this, comment it out, and we are going to put it in the update function. So now, what's going to happen is every frame of the game, we are going to create an instance of this cube. Everything looks good. Run it. There we go. Lots and lots of cubes. Now, they are technically falling to the ground. You can see it off on the edge there, but they're shooting off to the side. The reason is, well, they're happening every single frame of the game. And if we click on stats, I am running at 300 plus frames per second, which is that many milliseconds between each one, I think. Dropping down because it's becoming overloaded with too many cubes. But they're spawning so quick, they don't have time to get out of the way of each other. So that's why they're kind of being spawned on top of each other, and they're kind of bouncing off the side. And as you can see, as the milliseconds is increasing, it's starting to do weirder and weirder things. So it's actually getting some time to get in between it. But anyway, that's that. My suggestion to you from here is to create something to interact with the cubes. Right now, I mean, pretty cool. Bunch of cubes spawn. They shoot off in the distance. Neat. But you can go crazy with it at this point. You can make some new things. So I'll make a new 3D object. We'll make another cube. And we're going to call this one the ground. And there's no need to make this a prefab. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the shape of it so it actually looks like the ground. First and foremost, I don't know why it keeps spawning weird spots. Reset. And I want to change the Z to, sorry, not the Z, the Y. I want to make this lower. All right, you can drag right on here so you can see if it's the desired thing that you want. So I'm going to make this lower, and I'm going to scale this. I'm going to type it in manually. 50 by, not Y, Z. 50 by 50. That's pretty big. So now I have a ground to interact with. Let's see if that does anything. Yeah. Floating around a little bit. Though it might be more interesting to get some walls up to see them bouncing around. So pause it, right click it, and then I'll make one wall and then I'll let you guys do whatever it is you need to do. Duplicate it. Now in this case, it's already the size that I want it. What I can do is go up here to our rotate and rotate it. And it doesn't need to be perfect. In fact, a little bit of an angle might be cool. And then I will then move it. And now I got a wall. In fact, let's move it up a little bit too. There we go. Neat. Blocks hitting a wall. Anyway, go nuts from here. Be creative. Try some things out. There are some other ones you can create in here as far as 3D objects. There's spheres, cylinders, capsules. A couple other ones maybe you want to play around with. Tree. I didn't notice the tree was in here. Oh man, we should make trees. This is going on too long already. You guys can make the trees. What the hell is that? Okay, that's a tree. Sure. Alright, well that's it. I am done. Thanks for watching. We will do part 3 maybe tomorrow. Maybe the day after. We'll see. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.